If you are swimming in two opposite directions at the same time, you're not going to get anywhere. The anxious part is swimming in one direction upstream, and the avoidant part is swimming in the opposite direction downstream. So you are staying stagnant because you are constantly going towards something, pulling yourself back, towards something, pulling yourself back. The way we can integrate this, as I said, is to actually become aware of what we do want and to become cognizant of what we want to create. Hey, my name is Jack and welcome to States Unlocked, the place to learn about social psychology, human behaviour, and also learn practical tips on how you can improve your life. If you would like to understand yourself and others better, be sure to hit subscribe, hit the bell icon so you're notified whenever I upload a new video. And without further ado, I'm going to get on with the topic of this video, which is anxious-avoidant attachment and conflicting needs within this attachment style. As children, the way that we bond and interact with our primary caregivers, usually our mother, influences our attachment style, i.e. the way we attach to other human beings throughout the course of our lives. If we develop a secure attachment style, we are likely to go on to have secure, healthy relationships which are mutually giving and loving, and there's a lot of give and take. It doesn't always mean that this will definitely happen and play out like this, but it is a lot more likely that this will happen. If, however, you end up developing an insecure attachment style with your mother or your primary caregiver, this will then reflect later on in relationships you will have in your life because you will develop an insecure attachment style. So these are established styles of attaching, and they are split into two primary groups, which is secure and insecure. I've talked about this before. So there are lots of different subcategories. This video is going to be about the anxious-avoidant attachment style, otherwise known as disorganized attachment style, and I think there's a few other names to describe it as well, but essentially it is when you are very anxious and very avoidant at the same time. This video is all about breaking down the different parts of that attachment style and why there are two seemingly opposing needs that are going in different directions from one another. I would like to talk about this in this video because it's a very frustrating topic for many people because they feel that they are at this tug of war with themselves. They don't understand why they are vying for a relationship, let's say, on the one hand, and on the other hand completely avoiding a relationship. So therefore, part of them is never getting what they want. But it's a very dissatisfactory state to be in because you are constantly trying to go in one direction but never quite making it because you're getting pulled in the other direction as well. So it can be really annoying and frustrating and unfulfilling. So if we think about ourselves as having an anxious part and an avoidant part, so there's an anxious version of yourself and an avoidant part of yourself, and they both are trying to get their needs met. The avoidant part is trying to avoid loneliness, rejection, feeling abandoned, anything negative, basically feeling unloved. So that's what that is invested in, this avoidant part. They're trying to avoid any feelings of pain. The anxious part is trying to move towards love and affection because they are scared of all of those feelings that the avoidant part is scared of. Being anxious, alone, rejected, abandoned, all this other stuff. So essentially these two different parts are wanting the same thing. They're wanting to avoid rejection, abandonment, and those kinds of feelings, but they are going about it in two different ways. So the anxious part is saying, let's try and get love, let's really vie for this, let's do everything we can because we cannot be alone, so we need to chase it, we need to get it, we need to do everything we can because they're trying to run away from the feelings of unworthiness, abandonment, rejection, all of this stuff which they associate with being alone and not being connected with a partner. The avoidant part, on the other hand, is saying, but if we get close to someone and then they abandon us, then we're going to feel all that stuff, so no, let's not do it. So these two parts are just opposite sides of the same coin. So they are both wanting the same thing. They're wanting to avoid rejection and abandonment and all this other stuff. The reason sometimes we can get trapped in this cycle is because we are looking at what we don't want as opposed to what we do want. The reason our brains do this is because we are wired for survival and we learn from our experiences. If you've had an experience as a child where you have been open to love and connection and you felt hurt in some way because your needs weren't met, your cries weren't answered, or for one reason or another your parent was not able to attune to you and actually meet your need and meet you where you are at, and chances are this happened time and time again. This then taught you that trying to get connection is not safe. It will lead you to feeling rejection, shame, abandonment, and a feeling of unworthiness and those kinds of negative emotions. So of course, for the avoidant part of you, it has developed a belief that says, why go and do that? I don't want to do that. It's painful. I'm not going to do that. The problem for both the anxious part and the avoidant part is that neither of them are getting their needs met because we all have a fundamental need for connection and love. If you are swimming in two opposite directions at the same time, you're not going to get anywhere. The anxious part is swimming in one direction upstream, and the avoidant part is swimming in the opposite direction downstream. So you are staying stagnant because you are constantly going towards something, pulling yourself back, towards something, pulling yourself back. The way we can integrate this, as I said, is to actually become aware of what we do want and to become cognizant of what we want to create. We most certainly can develop a secure attachment style, even if we have been raised in an environment that has cultivated an insecure attachment style. But one thing is for sure, it is not necessarily an easy task because it requires becoming conscious of a lot of our behaviours. And a lot of our behaviours are in the shadow and they want to stay in the shadow. So they are motivated by hiding. The reason for this is because they think the strategies are working and they are trying to do something good for you. They fundamentally have a benevolent reason. So the avoidant part, while it might be frustrating and think, why am I constantly running away from relationships? Why am I avoiding this? It has a positive intention, okay? The hidden positive intention is that it wants to keep you safe. It doesn't want to get you hurt. First of all, let's have compassion for this part of ourselves, the avoidant part. We all have an avoidant part. Some of us just have it bigger than others. Everyone avoids some things, okay? And this avoidant part is actually a coping mechanism that we've developed throughout the ages to keep us alive, okay? We need to avoid certain things in order to stay alive. The problem arises when we start to think of healthy love as being dangerous. And as I've said before, if you've had a childhood where this has been the case, or it's felt like the case when you were really young, it can be really difficult to break these patterns. But difficult does not mean impossible, and it is possible. You can do it. All this means is that it requires an in-depth level of consciousness, awareness, and commitment to doing the work. You are worthy of getting what you want, and everyone is. Our behaviours don't always serve us. Our behaviours sometimes really can work against us, and something that was an adaptation that worked for us when we were a child might not work for us when we are 20, 30, 40, whatever, because this was a strategy that was designed for the situation we had at the time. So let's say our parents were being cold, they were pushing us back. We then learned, okay, well, I'm going to get on my parents' nerves if I'm constantly trying to give them hugs or I'm constantly trying to give them love or anything like that. So I'm going to pull back because I'm going to get rejected if I try and do that. So this is a lesson that we learned for that particular situation. The problem arises when we start to think that this particular adaptation applies to everything in life, and this becomes our blueprint for reality and how we think love is, or connection is, or attachment is. So we believe this and we run this same script throughout our lives. Oftentimes we will find that we get the same results over and over and over again, which reinforces the belief that this is life and this is what life has to offer and this is what love is, and this is how I am, and this is how people always treat me, etc. There is a thing called reciprocal roles, so if we fall into the role of the giver, sometimes we can always meet the taker, okay? Or we can elicit this role in someone else. This doesn't necessarily mean that everything's our fault, I want to be clear about this, but it is definitely a phenomenon that happens where if you behave in certain ways, you can elicit responses from other people. Ultimately, the anxious part of ourselves and the avoidant part of ourselves are on the same team. They want the same thing, but they're going about meeting their needs in different ways, okay? So it's all about actually having a dialogue with these two parts, reevaluating some of our behaviors, and actually being willing to change, willing to address some of these behaviors to try to integrate them and get them really on the same team, swimming in the same direction upstream. Thank you so much for watching. If you've enjoyed this video, please give it a like. Please subscribe to the channel, it really helps me out. Also, if you're interested in live coaching sessions, I'm offering them via my Patreon page, which you can find in the description below this video. Thanks so much for watching, and I will see you in the flip side. Ciao for now.